Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Where Your Cats Reread podcast. I'm your host, Coffee, and this week we are reading chapters 12 through 15 of Fire and Ice, the second book in the first Warrior Cats series arc. Now, where we left off, Fireheart and Graystripe had taken their apprentices on a hunting mission to Sunning Rocks. They can't hunt there because they end up scaring prey away, and so on the way back, they pass by the river that divides ThunderClan and RiverClan territory. Now, Graystripe spots a piece of prey on the river, and he falls into it. And a RiverClan cat named Silverstream rescues him. They start flirting a little bit, and then they go back to camp, and Tigerclaw is mad at them because they did not get any fresh kill back. And he suspects, because Graystripe is soaking wet, that they've been in RiverClan territory again. So Fireheart and Graystripe might be about to get into trouble for like the millionth time. So we start off chapter 12 with, quote, Fireheart lifted his head, about to speak, but Cinderpaw beat him to it. It's my fault, Tigerclaw. She stared boldly up at the great tabby. We were hunting on the frozen stream by the training hollow, on the bend by the deep pool. Even that bit was frozen. I slipped and Graystripe came to help me, but the ice wasn't thick enough for him and it cracked and he fell into the water. Tigerclaw looked into her clear, bright eyes as she added, It really is deep there. Fireheart had to pull him out. And wow, she really thought of that quick. She's really smart for a 12-year-old. Fireheart cringed, remembering how he had stood motionless with terror at the sight of Graystripe disappearing into the river. Tigerclaw nodded and looked at Graystripe. You'd better get yourself to Yellowfang before you freeze to death. The ThunderClan deputy stood up and stalked away, and Fireheart breathed a sigh of relief. Graystripe goes to the medicine den. Brackenpaw is exhausted and goes to his nest. Fireheart asks Cinderpaw if she's afraid of Tigerclaw, and she says, Why would I be? He's a great warrior. He realizes that she doesn't fear him because she has no way of knowing about his alleged treachery. Fireheart tells Cinderpaw she lies very well, meaning it as a scolding, and Cinderpaw says she tries not to, but thought the truth wouldn't be very helpful here. And he reluctantly agrees and tells her to go get warm, since it's still very cold out. Quote, he was worried at how easily the story about Graystripe's soaking had tumbled from Cinderpaw's mouth. But he also believed she was a well-meaning and honest cat. He thought of Ravenpaw, another good cat. Had the story he'd told about Tigerclaw killing Redtail simply been just that, a story that tumbled from his mouth in the heat of the moment? Fireheart shook the thought away. Ravenpaw had been terrified when he spoke to Fireheart. He obviously believed his own story. Why else would he have been frightened enough to leave the clan? Fireheart is starting to overthink literally everything, and it's getting annoying. He visited his kitty pet sister once. Oh yeah, that happened last episode if you missed it. He meets his sister. Her name is Princess. She's a kitty pet. And he keeps visiting her, and now he's kind of unsure about living in the clan. Like, he doesn't want to actively leave it, but he's like, man, I have such a better time with my sister because she understands what's going on. But it's just weird because he spent literally the entirety of the first book proving himself. And now he's like, well, I don't know. And it's very I don't know. It's just irritating to me. Continuing on, quote, the admiration in Cinderpaw's voice when she had spoken of Tigerclaw worried him. It seemed as though he alone suspected there was more to the ThunderClan deputy than met the eye. Bluestar's attitude toward Tigerclaw certainly hadn't changed. She had been treating him with the same trust and respect that she had always shown him. Well, yeah. He does realize that him and Graystripe are the only cats that know about Ravenpaw's point of view, about what happened in RiverClan that day. And Bluestar knows, but she doesn't really believe it, which is valid. Like, nobody else knows that Tigerclaw is evil, because he does a really, really good job of hiding it. So, of course, she doesn't recognize it. But anyway, Graystripe comes back and says he has to stay in camp, and he has a chill. He isn't very hungry at all, and Fireheart thinks this is unusual, as he usually has a big appetite. Graystripe is very spacey, so Fireheart thinks he probably just has a fever, but he's grateful he's still here due to that RiverClan cat saving him. So Graystripe is still clearly kind of not well in terms of, number one, he has like a chill, which I think is a cold, but also I think the death of that RiverClan warrior a couple of episodes ago is still getting to him. So there's a time skip, and Fireheart wakes up to find the first fog of Leaf Bear filling the den. He can barely see the other side of the clearing when he exits the warrior's den. Mouse Fur appears and says Tiger Claw wants to see him. Fireheart thanks her, but is kind of alarmed because he slipped away to visit Princess yesterday, and he's worried that Tiger Claw noticed. Quote, "What was that?" Graystripe's voice wheezed behind him. He sat down beside Fireheart, sneezed, and yawned. "Tiger Claw wants to see me." Fireheart looked at his friend. "You should be asleep." He was beginning to worry about Graystripe. He ought to have recovered by now. "Did you rest up yesterday?" he asked. "As much as I could between coughing and sneezing," complained Graystripe. "Then why weren't you in your nest when I got back from—" Fireheart hesitated, remembering he'd spent the afternoon talking with Princess. "Training. Do you think I get any peace and quiet in there?" Graystripe flicked his head back at the den. "Warriors trooping in and out all day. I found somewhere quieter, that's all." Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe Fireheart isn't the only cat in places he shouldn't be. They're both notorious for sneaking off. So, I don't know. Fireheart was about to ask where he went, but Graystripe spoke first. "I wonder what Tiger Claw wants?" Fireheart's paws pricked. "I better go find out." And so he goes to speak to Tiger Claw, who is sitting next to White Storm below the high rock. Tiger Claw tells him that it's time Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw were assessed. Fireheart is surprised at this because the apprentices had not been training long. Tiger Claw says, quote, "Blue Star wants to see how their training is progressing, especially with Graystripe being too ill to train Brackenpaw. If Brackenpaw is falling behind, she needs to know so she can appoint another mentor for him." Fireheart's tail twitched with annoyance. Surely Graystripe would recover soon. It would be unfair to entrust his first apprentice to someone else. "I've been taking Brackenpaw out with me and Cinderpaw every day," he meowed quickly. Tiger Claw glanced at White Storm and nodded. "Yes, but this is your first time as a mentor. It's a lot for you to take on, and ThunderClan needs well-trained warriors." "I know, and I'm just a kitty pet, not a clan-born warrior," Fireheart thought bitterly. He looked down at his paws, stinging with resentment. No one had asked him to take on Brackenpaw, and he'd been putting in a lot of effort with both apprentices. Once again, I see both sides of this. Fireheart's not wrong for being a little bit upset that Tiger Claw is kind of seemingly targeting him. But Tiger Claw's not wrong either, because if Graystripe isn't training his apprentice, a mentor can't train two at once. That's unfair, and there's plenty of other warriors that can do it. So I see both sides. Tiger Claw went on. "Send Brackenpaw and Cinderpaw on a hunting mission through Tall Pines as far as Two Lake Place. Keep an eye on them, watch them hunt, and report to me. I'll be interested to see how much fresh kill they add to the pile." White Storm added, "If Cinderpaw's skills match her enthusiasm, there should be plenty to eat tonight. I hear she is a keen apprentice." "Yes, she is," Fireheart agreed, though he was barely listening. Tiger Claw's words had set his heart racing. Why was Tiger Claw sending him to Two Lake Place again? His own hunting assessment had been held over exactly the same route, and Tiger Claw had seen him sharing words with an old kitty pet friend. He'd reported it to Blue Star, and she had questioned Fireheart's loyalty to the clan. Fireheart felt the fur along his spine begin to prickle. Was this Tiger Claw's way of warning him that he had been spotted talking to Princess? Honestly, it could be, since Tiger Claw seems to take any chance to question Fireheart's loyalty. But also, Fireheart is literally sneaking out and going behind everyone's back again. So, as an adult, I'm very much a see two sides of things person, and I can see both sides. I still think Tiger Claw needs to cool out a little bit, but yeah. Fireheart suggests that they take the apprentices to hunt at Sunning Rocks instead, but Tiger Claw declines because the Dawn Patrol scented RiverClan there, so it's not safe yet. Fireheart is privately thankful that RiverClan didn't spot them when Graystripe fell into the river. Tiger Claw also says that the foggy conditions will make the hunting test more interesting, so Fireheart goes on his way. He doesn't argue anymore. End quote. When Fireheart explained the assessment to the apprentices, Cinderpaw flicked up her tail and ran in an excited circle. "An assessment! Do you think we're ready?" "Of course," Fireheart meowed, hiding his doubts. "You've been working hard and learning quickly." "But won't the fog make hunting difficult?" asked Brackenpaw. Fireheart replied, "There are advantages to the stillness of the air." Brackenpaw looked thoughtful, then his eyes began to shine, and he mewed. "It'll be harder to sniff out prey, but it'll also make it harder for the prey to smell us." "Exactly," Fireheart agreed. "Shall we go now?" Cinderpaw asked. "As soon as you like," answered Fireheart. "But take your time, it's not a race." His words were wasted on Cinderpaw, who was already charging toward the camp entrance. "You've got till sunset," he called after her. Brackenpaw glanced at Fireheart and turned to follow his sister with a small sigh. I love how opposite Brackenpaw and Cinderpaw are. Brackenpaw's like, man, it's like the image of, like, that really popular, like, stick figure image with the guy who was holding, like, the different guy on a leash, and the guy on the leash is, like, crouching down and looks like a gremlin. I think I need to redraw that. Just Brackenpaw holding a leash on Cinderpaw. I'm gonna do that. Don't let me forget. Continuing on, Fireheart follows their trails while they hunt and discover they've both caught prey. Cinderpaw buried a whole stash, so he's very proud of her for that. Fireheart finds Brackenpaw and watches him successfully catch a mouse, and he's looking forward to reporting back to Tigerclaw about the apprentices and how well they're hunting. "Hi!" The small voice behind him made Fireheart jump into the air. He spun around. "How are we doing?" asked Cinderpaw, looking up at him with her head to one side. "You're not meant to ask that," Fireheart spat and licked his ruffled fur. "You're not supposed to speak to me at all. I'm assessing you, remember?" "Oh," mewed Cinderpaw. "Sorry." Fireheart sighed. He would never have dared to approach Tigerclaw during his own assessment. He didn't want to scare Cinderpaw into obedience, as Tigerclaw had done with Ravenpaw, but he wouldn't mind a little respect every now and then. Sometimes he didn't feel like Cinderpaw's mentor at all. That's because he was an apprentice like 2 weeks ago. Cinderpaw looked at the ground for a moment, then glanced up at him, a puzzled expression on her face. "Were you really born over there in Two-Leg Place?" The question caught Fireheart off guard. He glanced nervously in the direction of the two-leg fence, praying that the strange sense of Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw would keep Princess inside her own garden today. "Why'd you ask?" he mewed, stalling. "Tigerclaw mentioned it, that's all," answered Cinderpaw. She seemed genuinely curious, but Fireheart felt a dark quiver of menace at the mention of Tigerclaw's name. What else had Tigerclaw been telling Cinderpaw about him? "I was born a kitty pet," Fireheart meowed firmly, "but I'm a warrior now. My life is with the clan. My old life wasn't bad, but it's over, and I'm glad." "Oh, okay," mewed Cinderpaw, sounding unconcerned. "See you later." She spun around and charged off into the trees. I love how she's just a toddler. She's just a toddler in a 12-year-old body. Fireheart stood alone in the woods, his heart thudding as he stared at the two-leg fence. A moon ago, his words to Cinderpaw about being glad his old life was over would have been utterly true. Now he was not so sure. His fur tingled with the knowledge that some of his happiest moments recently had been spent sharing memories with his gentle kitty pet sister. And that's the end of Chapter 12. 2 things. Number 1. Tigerclaw telling apprentices that Fireheart was born a kitty pet is a little bit weird, a little bit out of pocket. Like, what is he saying to them? I'm glad Cinderpaw is normal about it, and I think most cats who did not know Fireheart when he became an apprentice are chill with it. Like, I'm glad Cinderpaw doesn't care, and it seems like Brackenpaw probably knows too, and he doesn't seem to care. I'm glad they don't care, because it seems to me like Tigerclaw might be trying to indoctrinate them to become, like, anti-kitty pet. And I can imagine him sort of telling them, like, hey, you know he's not from here, right? Like, just plain, simple xenophobia. But it doesn't seem to be working, which is good. Second thing, if Fireheart's memories with Princess are so happy, where are they? As a reader, we need to see just how happy he is, because otherwise this dilemma seems very silly, because we got literally 1 chapter of his interactions with Princess, and that did go well. I'm not trying to say that it's, like, implausible that Fireheart would not want to spend time with his sister, but, like, we haven't seen it. They just were like, yeah, he's sneaking out to see her. Like, they're not giving detail about it. And maybe if we saw even just one more scene with Fireheart and Princess, we could start to understand a little bit more why he's having such a dilemma about this. Because right now it's like, well, that's silly. Like, nothing horrible is happening in camp right now. We're going to get into chapter 13. It starts with, quote, "As the sun sank into the forest, Fireheart waited beside the pine tree where Cinderpaw had buried her first lot of freshkill. He heard paw steps and turned to see Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw padding toward him. Prey dangled from their mouths. Brackenpaw could barely hold his catch, it was so big. Fireheart felt a surge of relief. Even Tigerclaw couldn't criticize the apprentice's efforts. "I'll help carry this lot back," Fireheart offered, flicking away the covering of pine needles from Cinderpaw's stash. He dug it up, grasped the freshkill between his teeth, and set off back to the camp. When they arrived in the camp clearing, some of the clan cats were already taking their share of freshkill from the pile. Tigerclaw must have been looking out for their return, because he padded over to them as they dropped their catch near the rest. "They caught all this themselves?" he asked, nudging the pile with a massive paw. "Oh yes," Fireheart replied. "Good," meowed Tigerclaw. "Come and join me in Blue Star. Bring some freshkill for yourself. We're already eating." Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw looked at Fireheart with admiring stares. It was a privilege to eat with the clan leader and deputy. Fireheart didn't share their excitement. He'd hoped that he would report to Blue Star alone. The last cat he wanted to share his meal with was Tigerclaw. "By the way, have you seen Graystripe?" asked Tigerclaw. Fireheart felt a pang of concern as Tigerclaw continued. "He's supposed to stay in camp while he has this cold, but I haven't seen him since Sun-High." Fireheart shifted his paws. Had Graystripe gone off looking for peace and quiet again? "No," he admitted. "Perhaps he's with Yellowfang?" Perhaps, echoed Tigerclaw, and patted away to where Bluestar was gnawing a fat pigeon. This is very sus. What is Graystripe doing? Fireheart followed, trying to push away his growing worry about Graystripe's disappearances. He selected a small chaffinch from the pile of fresh gull as he passed, then wished he'd chosen a vole. How was he going to give his report with a mouthful of feathers? Hashtag just cat problems, I guess. Welcome, Fireheart, meowed Bluestar as Fireheart sat down in front of her. He placed the chaffinch on the ground, but decided not to start eating. Tigerclaw tells me your apprentice has caught plenty of prey. Bluestar's gaze was friendly. Tigerclaw, sitting up beside her, glared at him more critically, making Fireheart's tail twitch. Yes, they've never hunted in the mist before, but it didn't seem to put either of them off, Fireheart meowed. I watched Brackenpaw catch a wood mouse. His stalking was excellent. And what about Cinderpaw? Asked Bluestar. Fireheart noticed a steely glint appear in her eyes. Was she worried about Cinderpaw's abilities? Fireheart replied, her hunting skills are developing well. She has lots of enthusiasm, that's for sure, and she doesn't seem to be scared of anything. Aren't you worried that might make her reckless? Asked Bluestar. She's quick and inquisitive, which makes her a good learner. I think that will make up for her... Fireheart searched anxiously for the right word. Eagerness. Bluestar flicked her tail. Her eagerness, as you say, worries me, she meowed, flashing a glance at Tigerclaw. She will need careful guidance in her training. Fireheart's spirits plummeted. Was Bluestar unhappy with his mentoring? Bluestar's eyes softened. She was always going to be a challenge, but she's clearly turning into a fine hunter. You have done good work with her, Fireheart. With both of them, in fact. Fireheart brightened immediately, and Bluestar went on. I've noticed how you've taken over Brackenpaw's training without being asked, and I want you to carry on mentoring them both for the time being. Tigerclaw turned his gaze away, but Fireheart didn't miss the anger that flashed in his eyes. Thank you, Bluestar, he meowed. Okay, giving him 2 apprentices is unfair. Like, why not just talk to Graystripe and ask if he's okay with giving Brackenpaw up? Or just ask Graystripe, hey, are you okay? Like, do you want someone else to take over the mentoring of your apprentice for either the time being or for a longer period of time? So it's like, nope, let's just give Fireheart 2 apprentices. He has just the worst main character syndrome ever. Continuing on. I see your missing friend has returned, Tigerclaw growled without turning his head. Fireheart spun around to see Graystripe appearing from behind the nursery. He was probably just getting some peace and quiet, he suggested. He's still feverish, and it can't be easy being stuck in the camp all day. Easy or not, he should be concentrating on getting better, meowed Tigerclaw. Leaf Bear is no time for sickness in the camp. Mousefur was coughing on patrol this morning. I just hope StarClan protects us from green cough this season. We lost 5 kits to it last year. Bluestar nodded her gray head solemnly. Let's pray this Leaf Bear isn't as long or as hard. It's never an easy time for the clans. She looked wistful for a moment, then told Fireheart. Take that chaffinch and share it with Graystripe. He'll want to know how his apprentice did in the assessment. So Fireheart obeys and takes the prey to Graystripe, who is still sneezing. His cold isn't going away, but he sounds a lot more cheerful than he has before, so Fireheart is getting suspicious, because why are you cheerful when you have a cold? He tells Graystripe that Brackenpaw has been doing well in training, and then decides to ask him about his disappearances. Quote, Graystripe, he meowed after a long silence. Have you been out of the camp the past few days? Graystripe stopped chewing. Why do you ask? Fireheart's tail twitched uncomfortably. Well, you weren't here when I got in from last night's patrol, and Tigerclaw said he hadn't seen you since Sunhigh today. Tigerclaw? Graystripe sounded worried. I told him you were probably out looking for peace and quiet, or that you might be with Yellowfang, Fireheart meowed. He took another bite of chaffinch. Were you? He asked through the feathers, suddenly desperate for Graystripe to say yes, to stop the suspicion that Graystripe might be keeping a secret from him. But Graystripe ignored Fireheart's query. Well, thanks for covering for me. He carried on chewing. Yeah, he completely dodged the question, so he's definitely lying. Something is going on. Fireheart didn't ask any more questions, even though he was burning with curiosity. When Graystripe got to his paws and announced he was going to the den, Fireheart was still no wiser about what was on Graystripe's mind. Fireheart tells him he'll stay in the clearing a little bit longer. Graystripe walks away, and Fireheart stretches out on the ground and thinks, quote, From the smell of him, Graystripe had given himself a good wash very recently. Was he trying to hide some scent? Fireheart realized that Graystripe had pretty much admitted he had left the camp. But where could he have gone that he couldn't or wouldn't tell Fireheart? Suddenly his paws prickled. What about his own visits to Princess and Two Lake territory of all places? He'd washed himself thoroughly before returning to Camp 2 and never mentioned the meetings to Graystripe. Fireheart flipped over and sat up. There was something caught under one of his claws. He lifted his paw and tugged out the piece of dirt with his teeth. It was a catkin, old and shriveled, but definitely a catkin. And I had to look this up because I wasn't sure exactly what it was. A catkin is a slim, cylindrical spike with many small flowers found in plants like willows and birches. And I'll put a picture up for the video on YouTube. What was this doing here? Willow trees didn't grow in ThunderClan's part of the forest. In fact, the only willows Fireheart had ever seen grew close to the river in RiverClan territory. Fireheart held his breath as his heart began to pound. Had this come from Graystripe's coat? He crept into the warrior's den. Graystripe was already asleep. Fireheart lay awake beside him and wondered if Graystripe had really been foolish enough to return to RiverClan territory. The look in Leopardfur's eyes after Whiteclaw's death had shown that there was a score to be settled. Fireheart shuddered as he resolved to find out exactly where Graystripe was going and why. Yeah, that's not good. Why is he going to RiverClan? The next day, Fireheart runs into Running Wind outside of the warrior's den, and he tells Fireheart about how Graystripe's cold has started to run through the camp. Mousefur is now actually sick, and Swiftpaw is coming down with it. Running Wind says he's going to help with training Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw, and to meet in the Sandy Hollow. So Fireheart goes to the Hollow and meets the other three there, but he's very distracted by Graystripe because he knows he'll sneak out of camp again. He teaches the apprentices the wrong stalking techniques, and he's so restless, he makes up a lie that he has a bellyache to get out of training. Running Wind notices that he seemed a little distracted and tells him to go back to camp, and he'll take the two apprentices out hunting. Fireheart thanks him, feels a little ashamed that Running Wind believed the lie so easily. Quote, he limped across the hollow, trying to look as if he were in pain. As soon as he was safely among the trees, he broke into a run and raced back to the camp. When Graystripe had returned yesterday, he'd appeared from behind the nursery. Fireheart knew from experience that this was the best place to slip through the camp boundary without being noticed. It was where Yellowfang had escaped from the camp when the clan had suspected the old medicine cat of Spotted Leaf's murder. Fireheart padded around the outside of the camp and sniffed at the wall of bracken. His heart sank as he picked up Graystripe's scent. Graystripe had definitely been sneaking out of the camp this way, and often by the smell of it. At least the scent was stale, which meant he hadn't been this way today. So Fireheart decides to hide out near the secret exit and wait until Graystripe goes through it. Graystripe finally shows himself, goes through the gap, and at first he heads towards the Sandy Hollow, so Fireheart is hopeful that his cold is better and he can join the training session. Unfortunately, Graystripe redirects and goes to Sunning Rocks. Fireheart follows Graystripe to the RiverClan border, and he can hear that the river isn't frozen anymore. He looks toward the shore. End quote. Graystripe was sitting on the pebbles. The gray warrior was looking around, his ears pricked, but Fireheart could tell from the relaxed slope of his shoulders that he wasn't listening for prey. A strange cat's call sounded in the distance. A RiverClan patrol? Fireheart's fur prickled and his muscles instinctively tensed, but Graystripe didn't move. Then Fireheart heard a rustle in the bracken beyond the river. Still, Graystripe stayed where he was. Fireheart held his breath as a face appeared on the far riverbank. With barely a sound, the silver she-cat emerged from the undergrowth and slipped into the river. Fireheart felt his heart miss a beat. It was Silverstream, the she-cat who had rescued his friend. She swam easily across the river. Graystripe stood up and mewed with delight, kneading the pebbles with his paws in anticipation. Holding his tail high, he padded to the edge of the water as she climbed onto the shore. Silverstream shook the drops from her fur, and the two gray cats touched noses gently. Graystripe rubbed his muzzle along her jaw, and she lifted her chin happily. Then Silverstream stood on tiptoe and wound her slender body around his. For once, Graystripe didn't seem to mind getting wet at all, because he purred loud enough for Fireheart to hear as Silverstream pressed her damp fur against him. That's the end of Chapter 13. Wow, Graystripe has a secret girlfriend from another clan. Surely this will go well, as we're going to see in the next chapter. Chapter 14. Quote, Fireheart's hackles bristled with horror. How could Graystripe be so stupid? He was breaking every part of the warrior code by meeting this cat from another clan. Graystripe! Fireheart hissed as he sprang from the bushes. The two cats spun around to face him. Silverstream's ears flattened angrily. Graystripe just stared at him, startled. You followed me! Fireheart ignored his stunned meow. What are you doing? Don't you know how dangerous this is? Silverstream spoke up. It's okay. There won't be a patrol here till after sunset. You can be sure of that, can you? As if you know all your clan's movements? Fireheart growled. Silverstream lifted her chin. Actually, I do. My father is Cricketstar, the leader of RiverClan. Actually... That's really funny. Yeah, so she's a nepo baby too. That's really awesome. Fireheart froze. What are you playing at? He spat at Graystripe. Could you have chosen worse? That's a little bit harsh. Graystripe met Fireheart's eyes for an instant, then turned to Silverstream. I'd better go, he mewed. Silverstream blinked slowly and stretched her head forward to touch his cheek. They closed their eyes and remained still for a moment. Fireheart watched, his paws prickling with alarm. Silverstream whispered something into Graystripe's ear, and the two cats stepped apart. The RiverClan she-cat raised her head and stared challengingly into Fireheart's eyes before slipping back into the river. She's like, yeah, I stole your boyfriend. What are you going to do about it? Graystripe bounded over to Fireheart's side. The two friends didn't speak as they raced out of RiverClan territory and back past Sunning Rocks. As they approached the camp, Graystripe slowed his pace. Fireheart slowed too. You must stop seeing her, he panted. His panic had lessened now that they were well away from the RiverClan border, but he was still angry. I can't, replied Graystripe hoarsely. He coughed, his sides heaving. I don't understand, Fireheart meowed. RiverClan is completely hostile to ThunderClan at the moment. You heard Leopardfur after Whiteclaw died. Fireheart winced, knowing that the reminder would be painful for his friend, but he couldn't stop now. How do we even know you can trust this RiverClan cat? You don't know Silverstream, Graystripe spat back. You don't know her. She goes to another school. He stopped and sat down, his eyes glazed with pain. And there's no need to remind me about Whiteclaw. Do you think it's easy knowing I'm responsible for the death of one of Silverstream's clanmates? Fireheart snorted impatiently. Whiteclaw was an enemy warrior, not a clanmate. Well, I kind of disagree with this. Fireheart was so socialist last book, and now he's like, no, everybody's my freaking enemy. I kind of get Graystripe here. I kind of get both. See, here I go again. I get both sides of this. I think Fireheart is correct in being mad at Graystripe because he's breaking the law and doing something very dangerous. But I think Graystripe isn't entirely wrong for, caring about Silverstream's feelings and also other cats in general. Anyway, Graystripe went on. Silverstream understands it was an accident. The gorge was no place for a battle. Any cat could have fallen there. Fireheart paced around him as Graystripe began to lick the scent of Silverstream from his fur. It doesn't matter what Silverstream thinks. What about your loyalty to ThunderClan? He demanded. You're breaking the clan code by seeing her. Graystripe stopped washing. You think I don't know that? He hissed. Do you doubt my loyalty to ThunderClan? Bro, yes. He just told you. Are you dumb? Fireheart says. What else can I think? You can't see her without lying to the clan. And what if we have a battle with RiverClan? Have you thought about that? You worry too much, Graystripe snapped. It won't come to that. Now that Broken Star's gone and WindClan is back, the clans will be at peace. RiverClan doesn't seem to be acting very peacefully, Fireheart pointed out. You know they've been hunting on Sunning Rocks in our territory. They've been hunting on Sunning Rocks since before I was kidded, scoffed Graystripe, twisting to wash the base of his tail. Fireheart carried on pacing. Graystripe just didn't seem to understand what he was doing. Okay, what if a RiverClan patrol catches you? Silverstream won't let that happen, answered Graystripe between long licks along his bushy tail. For StarClan's sake, aren't you even a bit worried? Fireheart burst out, exasperated. Graystripe stopped washing and looked up at his friend. You don't get it, do you? StarClan must have planned this. Look, Silverstream wants to see me, even after what happened to Whiteclaw. We share the same thoughts. It's as if we were born into the same clan. Bruh, not the universe brought us together baloney. No, bro. She's just pretty. She's just a fine aw cat. You just want her so bad. It's not the stars aligning. Fireheart realized it was pointless to argue anymore. Come on, he meowed heavily. We'd better get back before you're missed again. Graystripe got to his paws. Side by side, he and Fireheart walked to the top of the ravine and looked down at the camp. Over and over, one thought echoed in Fireheart's mind. How could Graystripe love Crooked Star's daughter but remain loyal to ThunderClan? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. They get back to camp, and Fireheart is angry that he has to aid in Graystripe's sneaking around, which is entirely valid. They run into Whitestorm, and he tells Graystripe he should be resting to avoid spreading his cold to the rest of the clan. He also questions Fireheart, who lies about his bellyache again. Whitestorm tells him to go hunt after he gets medicine from Yellowfang because they can't have warriors doing nothing in the middle of Leafbear, which is understandable. So Fireheart goes to Yellowfang's den, and, quote, Yellowfang was busy mixing herbs. There were several heaps of leaves gathered in front of her. Fireheart stood and watched her for a moment without speaking. He felt sad, drained after the row with Graystripe. He couldn't help wishing it were Spotted Leaf here mixing herbs instead of Yellowfang. Again, why is he still obsessed with her? She's been dead for months. Plus, he loves Yellowfang. She's like his mom, or his grandma, basically. What are we doing? Yellowfang glanced up at him. My supplies are running low. I might need help to restock. Fireheart didn't reply. He was just wondering if he should confide his worries about Graystripe when she interrupted his thoughts. It looks like there's Whitecough in the camp, she growled, prodding impatiently at a dried leaf. 2 cases this morning. So yeah, I kind of looked up what Whitecough is. It's just a mild chest infection, similar to probably either a sinus infection or bronchitis in humans. That's my best guess. Swiftpaw? Asked Fireheart. The old medicine cat shook her head. Swiftpaw's just got a cold. It's Speckletail's kit. And Patchpelt. Not serious at the moment, but we need to concentrate on getting the clan strong. Leafbearer always brings the threat of green cough. Fireheart understood her concern. Green cough was a killer. Yellowfang looked up again. What do you want? Oh, nothing. Just a bellyache, but it doesn't matter if you're busy. Bad? She meowed. No, Fireheart admitted, unable to meet her gaze. Then come back when it is. The medicine cat went back to her mixing. Fireheart turned to leave, but Yellowfang called him back. Make sure Graystripe stays in his den, will you? He's a strong young warrior. If he were resting, his cough would be better by now. She hasn't guessed that Graystripe's been sneaking out of camp. Fireheart goes hunting and catches a few pieces of prey, but then decides to go to try to talk to Silverstream and see if maybe she will listen, since Graystripe isn't. He stashes his prey beneath a tree root, and, quote, for the second time that day, he turned towards Sunning Rocks. The rain that had been threatening all day finally began to fall. It was drumming steadily on the bracken by the time Fireheart crept down the shadowy slope toward the river. Even in the rain, Silverstream's scent was easy to find. Fireheart followed the trail to the place where he had found Graystripe and Silverstream together. Hyper alert, he padded onto the shore. The dark water rushed past relentlessly, setting a shiver down Fireheart's spine. He had no desire to swim across. His fur did not have the oily protection from the water that of the RiverClan cats had, and Leaf Bear was no season to get a soaking. Suddenly, Fireheart froze. He smelled RiverClan warriors. He dropped to a crouch and looked across the river to see Silverstream pushing her way through the trailing branches of a willow. Behind her came two of her clan, one of them a warrior with massive shoulders and battle-torn ears. The warrior sniffed the air suspiciously and peered around. Fireheart heard the blood roaring in his ears. Had the warrior picked up a scent? That's the end of chapter 14, and we're going to continue right on to chapter 15, the last chapter for today. Quote, very, very quietly, Fireheart backed into the bracken. The RiverClan warrior had stopped smelling the air, but he was still looking around. Fireheart turned, still crouching, and began to creep away. He heard a small splash behind him. A cat had slipped into the river. Fireheart glanced over his shoulder, his heart pounding. Through the bracken, he could see a silver head bobbing toward him. Silverstream! But where were the other two cats? He circled cautiously, tasting the air with an open mouth. No scent of them nearby. They must have moved on. He looked back at Silverstream, swimming determinedly across the river. For a moment, Fireheart wondered if this was a trap, wondered if he should run, but his concern about Graystripe made him stay. The silver tabby climbed onto the bank and hissed quietly, Fireheart, I know you're there. I can smell you. It's okay. Stonefur and Shadepaw have gone. Fireheart didn't move. Fireheart, I wouldn't let anything happen to Graystripe's closest friend. She sounded impatient. Believe me, for StarClan's sake. Fireheart crept slowly from his hiding place. Silverstream stared at him, her tail twitching. What are you doing here? I was looking for you, he whispered, painfully aware he was in enemy territory. Silverstream flicked her ears in alarm. Is Graystripe okay? Has his cough gotten worse? Fireheart was irritated by her concern. He didn't want to know how much the she-cat cared for his best friend. He's fine, he growled, his caution swept away by anger. But he won't be if he carries on meeting you. Oh, he is so jealous. I think this is going beyond, I want to protect my friend. I think this is, I'm jealous. Silverstream bristled. I won't let anything bad happen to Graystripe. Oh, really? Fireheart snorted. And what could you do to protect him? I am a clan leader's daughter, meowed Silverstream. My daddy works for the government. She's really trying to flex her nepo baby card here. Really going for it. Like, okay, we get it, bro. Fireheart says, does that give you the power to control your father's warriors? You're hardly more than an apprentice. Like you, she hissed indignantly. Yes, that's true, Fireheart admitted. And that's why I'm not sure I could protect Graystripe from the anger of his own clan, or yours, if they find out you're seeing each other. Silverstream tried to glare at him, but her eyes were clouded with emotion. I can't stop seeing him, she meowed, her voice softened to a whisper. I love him, but the tension between our clans is bad enough already. Fireheart was too angry to feel any sympathy. We know RiverClan is hunting in our territory. The defiant gleam returned to Silverstream's eyes. If ThunderClan understood why, they wouldn't begrudge what we catch there. Why? Fireheart flashed back at her. My clan is hungry. Our kits cry because their mothers have no milk. The elders are dying for lack of decent prey. Fireheart stared, taken aback. But you've got the river, he protested. Every cat knew that RiverClan enjoyed the best hunting of all. Fish from the river as well as woodland prey in the fields beyond. It's not enough. Two Legs have taken over our territory downstream. They built a camp there all greenleaf and stayed as long as the fish were plentiful. By the time they went, the fishing was scarce, and the damage they've done to the forest means that even woodland prey is harder to find. Fireheart felt a pang of pity in spite of his anger. He could guess how serious this must be for RiverClan. They were used to their rich diet of fish, and grew fat on it every greenleaf so that they could endure the harsh moons of Leaf Bear. He stared at the she-cat with new eyes. She wasn't slim, he realized. She was skinny. As her wet coat clung to her, he could see her ribs. Suddenly he understood Crooked Star's hostility to Blue Star's plan at the gathering. That's why you didn't want WindClan to come home. Rabbits run on the moorlands all year round, Silverstream explained. They were our only hope of making it through Leaf Bear without losing kits. She shook her head slowly before lifting her gaze back to Fireheart. Does Graystripe know all this? He asked. Silverstream nodded. Fireheart looked at her, perplexed for a moment, but he couldn't let these feelings get in the way of the warrior code, and neither could his friend. Whatever problems your clan has, you still have to stop seeing Graystripe. No, answered Silverstream, lifting her chin. Her eyes flashed. How can our love do any harm? Girl, he just explained why it will do you harm. Did her and Graystripe lose their ears? On the other hand, I do get it. Technically, as long as they don't get caught, then they're not doing anything wrong. As long as they don't share sensitive information from the other clans. Or lose loyalty towards their, home clan. But it's still too complicated to even risk. The River Clan Patrol is coming back at this point, so they break and Fireheart runs back to the forest to gather his prey. He's debating visiting Princess, but since it's raining, she won't be outside. With an uneasy twinge, Fireheart realized that Graystripe wasn't the only one with divided loyalties. Yeah, he's kind of being a hypocrite because he's mad at Graystripe for visiting an enemy warrior every day, and he's visiting his kitty pet sister every day. And there's already cats in the clan that don't believe he'll ever be a full warrior, and he's, proving them right. So the camp is quiet when he returns. Whitestorm tells him to take Yellowfang prey because she has not had time to eat, which means sickness is getting worse in camp. So he goes and brings prey to Yellowfang. Quote, a tabby kit lay in a nest of moss in the bracken at the edge of the clearing. Yellowfang crouched beside it, trying to persuade it to eat some herbs. The kit snuffled pitifully, blinking up at her with streaming eyes and nose. Fireheart realized this must be the kit with White Cough. Yellowfang turned when she heard Fireheart arrive. Is that for me? She meowed, looking at the mice hanging from Fireheart's mouth. He nodded and dropped them on the ground. Thanks. Now that you're here, why don't you see if you can persuade this kid to take his medicine? She padded over to the mice, moving stiffly from her old shoulder injury, and began to gnaw on one hungrily. Fireheart approached the kit. It looked up at him, opening its tiny mouth in a rasping, painful cough. Fireheart gently pushed a small green herb toward it. If you want to be a warrior, you'll have to get used to swallowing these horrible things, he mewed. When you make your trip to the Moonstone, you have to eat herbs far worse than this. The kit looked wonderingly at him through half-closed eyes. Think of it as practice, Fireheart urged. Practice for when you become a warrior. The kit reached forward and took a tentative mouthful. He did a good job. He did a good job at that. Not me. I would have been like, can you just take your medicine or you'll die? Reason number 87 why I'm never becoming a parent. Fireheart gave it an encouraging purr. Yellowfang appeared at his side. Well done, she meowed. She gestured with her nose, and Fireheart understood she wanted to talk to him. He followed her to the shelter of the tall rock where she slept. The rain was still falling, and Yellowfang's matted gray fur was soaked, her sodden tail dragging in the dirt. Bluestar has White Cough, she meowed gravely. But White Cough isn't that serious, right? Yellowfang shook her head. It came on very quickly, she meowed, and it's affected her badly. Fireheart's stomach tightened as he remembered the dwindling number of lives left to the clan leader. I warned her to stay away from the other sick cats, but she wanted to see them, Yellowfang went on. She's sleeping in her den at the moment. Frostfur is with her. The fear in Yellowfang's eyes made Fireheart wonder if she knew the truth about Bluestar's lives. Fireheart had assumed he was the only cat in the camp whom Bluestar had shared her secret with. The rest of the clan thought she had 3 lives left, but perhaps a medicine cat could sense these things instinctively. The truth was, if Bluestar lost a life, she would have only 1 more left. And that's the end of chapter 15. That's very ominous. It's not been a good few chapters for Fireheart this episode. He found his best friend basically cheating on him and his clan, and Bluestar might lose a life from sickness. And Tigerclaw still suspects him of not being fully committed to the clan, which he isn't, clearly. So Fireheart is just taking L after L after L, and I really, really, really hope he gets it together. I really hope things improve. I don't know. It wasn't a bad episode. Enough things happened that it wasn't completely filler, but it was definitely interesting. So yeah, that's the end of today's episode. Thank you for joining me yet again. These episodes have gotten a little bit shorter because I've slowly gotten used to my system of reading and taking notes and writing things down. So it doesn't take as long to edit and it doesn't take as long to record. And then also, the podcast isn't super long, so you guys can still listen to it and not have to dedicate a full hour. Usually, anyway. There probably will be episodes where it's an hour or longer at some point. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. It's been a blast as always. Thanks for hanging out and listening to some warrior cats. I hope your day is a little bit better because of it. And I'll see you next time where we see what happens to Bluestar. We see if Graystripe and Silverstream can stop seeing each other, which they probably won't, but we'll see. And yeah, we'll see what else happens. All the links to where you can listen to this podcast are in the description, as well as social media links, so you can follow to instantly get updated of when new episodes release. And yeah, thank you. I hope you guys have a great week, and may StarClan light your path.